Get off the floor, old woman. You look like a dog dragging itself to die.
My knees. I can't do chemicals anymore. I have a doctor's note.
He laughed.
A doctor's note? Nobody cares if you hurt, old woman.
The label says it's dangerous for people with...
You know what's dangerous? A used-up mule thinking she still has rights.
He snatched the paper from her hand, tore it in half, dropped the pieces on the wet floor.
Pick those up too while you're down there.
An elderly janitor on her knees in the back hallway of a home improvement store. 67 years old. A manager standing over her, coffee in hand, smiling. 3 employees watched from the doorway. Nobody moved. But there was a 4th person watching, and what he just witnessed was only the beginning of something much worse hiding inside that store. Solomon Fletcher built his company from the stockroom up. 26 years ago, he was the kid hauling lumber in a home improvement store, earning minimum wage, sleeping in a car he couldn't afford to fix. Now he owned 25 locations across 3 states, a corner office with floor-to-ceiling glass, and the kind of reputation that got him invited to panels about leadership with integrity. On his desk, next to a stack of quarterly reports, sat a framed photograph. A woman in a janitor's uniform. Tired eyes, cracked hands, smiling anyway. His mother. She cleaned office buildings for 30 years, never missed a shift. Died at 59. Heart gave out on a Tuesday morning, mop still in the closet, time cards still punched in. Nobody from that company came to the funeral. Solomon looked at that photo every single day. It was the reason he started this business, the reason he paid above market, the reason every policy in his company started with one question: would this have protected her? But today, something on his desk made him wonder if any of that mattered. A manila folder. Store number 09, attrition report. His COO had flagged it during the quarterly review, but called it a minor regional variance. Solomon opened it anyway. The numbers were clean, revenue steady, customer satisfaction above average, labor costs, the lowest in the chain. On paper, store number 09 was a model location. He almost closed the folder. Then he noticed the appendix, employee separations, 12 names in 3 years. He scanned the list, ages, tenure, demographics. His finger stopped. 4 employees over 60 had resigned in 20 months, all listed as voluntary, all people of color. He picked up the phone. Nadine Wells walked into his office 14 minutes later. She was his HR director, sharp, cautious, the kind of person who chose her words the way a surgeon chose incisions. She sat down. Didn't wait for him to ask. "I flagged store number 09 6 months ago," she said. "Regional told me it was handled." "Handled how?" "That's the problem. I don't know. I sent a follow-up. Never got a response. I sent a second one. Got a one-liner back. Store manager addressed the concerns internally." Solomon turned the folder toward her. 4 employees over 60, 20 months, all voluntary. Nadine looked at the page. Then she looked at him. "That word is doing a lot of heavy lifting, Solomon." "Who's the store manager?" "Craig Dutton, 8 years at the location, never had a formal complaint reach corporate." "Never?" "Not one." Solomon let that sit. A store with the highest turnover in the chain, and not a single complaint had ever made it past the building. That night, he pulled up the company's anonymous ethics hotline. One entry from store number 09, filed 11 weeks ago. No name attached. 4 words. "They're hurting people here." He read it 3 times. Then he closed the laptop, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling. His phone buzzed. A board member. Another message about expansion timelines and capital allocation. He didn't open it. Instead, he walked to his closet, pulled out a pair of jeans he hadn't worn in years, a plain gray polo, at the bottom of the shelf. Work boots, his father's, worn at the soles, cracked at the toe. He hadn't put them on since college. He laced them up. They still fit. He called his COO the next morning, told him he was taking a personal week. Didn't say where, didn't say why. The drive to store number 9 took 3 hours. Suburban sprawl, strip malls, a Waffle House, a church with a marquee that read, "God sees what you ignore." He pulled into the parking lot at dawn. It was mostly empty. One car sat near the employee entrance, a 15-year-old sedan, paint peeling on the hood, a handicap placard hanging from the rearview mirror. He didn't know whose car it was, not yet. He clipped a name tag to his shirt. Sam. Checked his reflection in the rear view. No watch, no wedding ring, nothing that said corner office. He stepped out. The air smelled like asphalt and cut grass. Somewhere inside that building, a 67-year-old woman was about to start another shift on her knees. And Solomon Fletcher, the man whose name was on the deed, was about to find out why. Grace Bellamy had been awake since 4:30. Not because she wanted to be, because her knees wouldn't let her sleep past the swelling. She sat on the edge of her bed for 10 minutes, pressing her palms against her kneecaps, waiting for the joints to loosen enough to stand. On the nightstand, 3 prescription bottles, blood pressure, arthritis, an inhaler she'd started using 6 months ago when the coughing got bad. She got dressed in the dark. Her grandson, Marcus, was still asleep in the next room, 8 years old. She'd been raising him since his mother, Grace's daughter, left 2 years ago. No note, no forwarding address, just a boy and a grandmother and a 2-bedroom apartment that cost more than it should. Grace drove to store number 09 in the same sedan she'd had for 15 years. Handicap placard on the mirror. Child's backpack on the passenger seat. She'd drop Marcus at school on days when the bus didn't come. She clocked in at 6. The back hallway smelled the way it always did. Bleach, floor wax, and something chemical she couldn't name but could taste at the back of her throat. She pulled on her gloves, thin latex, too big. The fingertips were torn from yesterday. She'd asked for new ones twice, never got them. By 9 o'clock, she had mopped the stock room, scrubbed the employee restroom, and hauled 2 bags of garbage to the dumpster out back. Her right knee had locked up once near the loading dock. She leaned against the wall, waited it out, kept going. She'd been doing this for 2 years. Before that, 30 years as a school secretary. She'd loved that job, knew every student's name, filed every form on time, never once got written up. Then the district cut her pension, just like that. A budget line deleted in a meeting she wasn't invited to. 30 years, gone in 1 vote. She found the janitorial job at 65. Not because she wanted it, because she needed the insurance. Without it, her medications alone cost $1,100 a month. That morning, Grace did something she'd been thinking about for weeks. She filed a formal complaint. She'd written it by hand the night before, sitting at the kitchen table after Marcus went to bed. Neat handwriting, precise dates. The complaint described 3 things: the chemicals she'd been asked to use without ventilation, the overnight shifts she'd been assigned 6 days in a row, and the doctor's note Craig had ignored for 2 weeks. She attached the doctor's note. She attached a photograph of the chemical label, the small print that read, "Hazardous to individuals with respiratory conditions. Ensure adequate ventilation." She walked into Craig's office at 9:15 and placed the paper on his desk. He looked at it. Then he looked at her. "Close the door," he said. "I'd rather leave it open." He smiled. "Suit yourself." He picked up the complaint. Read it slowly, out loud. Every word, projected just enough that the 2 cashiers near the hallway could hear. "So, you're saying the chemicals are hurting you, and you want... what, a different assignment?" He set the paper down. "Grace, you're a janitor. Janitor's clean. That's the deal. The doctor said, the doctor doesn't work here. I do." He leaned back. You know how many people your age would kill for this job? With benefits? I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking you to follow the safety label. Something shifted in his face. The smile didn't disappear. It hardened. He picked up the complaint, held it with both hands, and tore it, slowly, deliberately, in half, then in quarters. He let the pieces fall on his desk like confetti. You should be grateful anyone still hires a woman your age. The hallway went silent. A cashier looked down at her register. Terrence Odom, stocking shelves at the end of aisle 6, stood frozen, a pricing gun in one hand, his breath caught somewhere between his chest and his throat. Grace didn't move. She didn't cry. She looked at Craig and said 5 words. I have a copy. Craig's smile cracked, just for a second. Surprise, then recalculation. His voice dropped half a register. Good for you. Now get back to work. You're on overnight chemical deep clean starting tomorrow. 6 days. He picked up his coffee. And Grace? Next time you want to waste my morning, don't. She walked out. In the hallway, her hands shook. She pressed them flat against the wall, partly to steady herself, partly because her knees were threatening to buckle. Terrence watched from behind the shelf. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the floor. In the break room, Dawn Whitaker leaned toward a part-timer and whispered, Last person who filed a complaint was gone in 2 weeks. They both went quiet when Craig walked past the door, coffee mug in hand, smiling. After her shift, Grace sat in her car. Engine off, hands on the steering wheel, she opened the glove box. Inside, a folder, the copy of her complaint, the doctor's note, 3 photographs of chemical labels, a handwritten timeline, dates, incidents, every retaliatory action Craig had taken since she first asked for non-chemical duties. She didn't just keep a copy, she'd been building a file. 30 years as a school secretary had taught her one thing. If it's not documented, it didn't happen. She closed the folder, tucked it back, turned the key. Marcus was waiting for dinner. Back inside, Craig sat alone in his office. Door closed. He opened his laptop and typed a performance memo. Grace Bellamy, repeated insubordination, failure to follow supervisor directives, attitude concerns. He changed the date, 2 weeks earlier, printed it, signed it, dropped it into her personnel file. He opened the drawer. Inside, 5 more memos, different names, same language, same template. All employees of color, all over 55. He closed the drawer and finished his coffee. Solomon showed up at the employee entrance at 6:50 the next morning. The back of store number 09 looked nothing like the front. The front had clean signage, stacked displays, and a greeter named Paula who smiled at every customer who walked in. The back had cracked asphalt, a dumpster with a broken lid, and a security camera mounted above the door. Red light dead. Not blinking, not recording. He pulled the door open. The hallway smelled like industrial cleaner and old cardboard. A schedule board hung on the wall to the right, laminated, color-coded, covered in handwriting. He stopped. Read it. One name appeared in the overnight column 6 times in a row. Grace Bellamy. No one else had more than 3. He kept walking. Craig Dutton's office was at the end of the hallway. Door closed. A muffled voice inside, laughing about something. Through the window, Solomon could see a regional performance trophy on the shelf, a framed Employee of the Month plaque that hadn't been updated in 11 months, and a filing cabinet pushed against the far wall. He noted the cabinet, moved on. The break room was small, 1 working microwave, 1 table with a wobble, a handwritten sign above the sink. Clean up after yourself, aggressive capitals, underlined twice. On the wall, an OSHA workplace safety poster. Solomon walked closer. The poster was 3 years out of date, and the complaint hotline number at the bottom had been scratched off. Not faded, scratched, with something sharp. He touched the surface. Deliberate. Craig appeared at 8:15. He shook Solomon's hand. 2 seconds limp grip, eyes already somewhere else. Sam, right? Yes, sir. You lift, you shelve, you clock out. That's the whole job. Questions? No, sir. Good. Craig was already walking away. Don't bother me unless something's on fire. Solomon watched him go. 26 years of running a company, and Craig Dutton had looked through him like he wasn't there, hired and dismissed in under 30 seconds. He wondered how many people in this building had been looked through the same way. He spent the first hour stocking canned goods on aisle 9. He watched the floor. Who moved how? Who talked to whom? Who flinched? When Craig's voice crackled over the intercom, "Terrence, register 4 now." Solomon saw 3 employees stiffen at the same time, shoulders up, eyes down, the kind of reflex that takes months to learn. Then he saw her, Grace Bellamy, pushing a mop cart down the back hallway, 67 years old, knee braces visible below her pant legs. Alone. The cart had a broken wheel. It pulled to the left with every push, and she had to correct it with her hip. She didn't look up. She didn't look at anyone. Solomon stood at the end of the aisle and watched her disappear around the corner. The hallway light flickered once above her head. He thought about his mother. Same hallway, different building, same silence. In the stockroom, he met Terrence Odom, mid-30s, quiet. The kind of man who made himself smaller than he was, shoulders forward, voice low, eyes that checked the exits before finishing a sentence. Terrence showed him where the pricing gun was, handed it over without small talk. Solomon tried anyway. Been here long? 3 years. How's the manager? Terrence looked at him. Really looked. For the first time. Then he shook his head. You seem like a nice guy, Sam. He turned back to the shelf. Nice guys here. They don't last. He walked away. Solomon stood there, pricing gun in hand, listening to the hum of the loading dock refrigerator and the faint sound of Grace's mop cart squeaking down the hallway. Something was very wrong in this building, and 3 days was all he had to prove it. Solomon spent his first full day watching. He stocked shelves, enough to stay invisible, but his eyes were on the schedule board, the hallway, and the people who moved through them like they were walking on glass. By noon, he had seen enough to know the schedule wasn't random. Every closing shift belonged to employees of color. Every single one. The white cashiers had morning rotations and weekends off. A part-timer named Kyle, 22, had called in late twice that week. Craig praised him on the intercom at 3 o'clock. Kyle, great job keeping the front clean today. That's how it's done. Kyle had arrived 40 minutes late and spent most of his shift on his phone. Meanwhile, Grace was on hour 8. She'd mopped the entire back hallway, scrubbed the loading dock on her hands and knees, and hauled chemical buckets to the employee restroom. A room with no windows, no fan, and a vent taped over with packing tape. Solomon walked past her once. She was coughing, deep and wet, the kind that bent her at the waist and left her gripping the mop handle with both hands just to stay upright. You okay? He asked. She straightened, forced a smile. Just dust. It wasn't dust. He could smell the chemicals from 6 feet away. He looked at her hands, swollen knuckles, cracked skin. The latex gloves were too big and torn at 2 fingertips, chemicals soaking through. That afternoon, he checked the break room bulletin board. The MSDS binder, required by federal law to be accessible to every employee, was gone. Not missing. Gone. A clean rectangle of dust where it had sat, perfectly preserved. Solomon ran his finger across the dust line. His jaw tightened. Lunch break. Parking lot. Solomon sat on the curb with a sandwich he didn't eat. Dawn Whitaker sat down 3 feet away. 4 years at the store. Warm face. Tired eyes. There was a woman here. Eleanor, Dawn said. 62. Worked here 9 years. Craig wrote her up 3 times in 1 month. Attitude, attendance, insubordination. Boom, boom, boom. like he had them ready in a drawer. What happened? Gone by the 4th week. Voluntary resignation. She made air quotes. She was crying in Craig's office the day before she left. Did anyone report it? Dawn looked at him, not with anger, with exhaustion. Report it to who? Craig is the report. That afternoon, Solomon volunteered to reorganize the stockroom. In the back corner, behind a shelf of discontinued paint cans, he found a cardboard box, unsealed. Inside, 6 personnel files, 6 performance memos, every employee a person of color, 4 over 55. Attitude issues, not receptive to feedback. Not a team player, resistant to scheduling adjustments. Attendance concerns, unreliable during peak hours. 6 different names, the same 3 phrases, rotated, rearranged, but identical in structure, like they'd been copied from a template, because they had. Solomon photographed every page,